You mentioned, and I would guess that a podcast or some type of thought leadership platform is part of that. Gary, you have a few books, at least 2 that you're writing right now, I think. Is that right?
That's correct.
Being published. And so books are seem like a piece of thought leadership where it's important. And additionally, you've got the podcast. Right. And you started in 2019. Then in 2020, I think your companies got kind of busy, it sounds like. And so you held off on the podcast until late 2023.
Right.
And it's feeling like this is a big deal to you, like you need to do it, like you should do it. And even though you got like 13 companies going strong and money's coming in, you still feel like the podcast is an important thing for what you guys are doing in your different companies. So I want to find out, how does the podcast connect with you or your businesses? And so how does it connect? And also, like, why restart it? Why is it so important to you?
Oh, it's a great question. Honestly, Adam, here's the thing. In 2020, when COVID hit, we did get really busy. Businesses got really, what we call, not just the world got sick, businesses got sick. I actually released a book that year called Is Your Business Sick? And so like, it was really important to understand, like, businesses were getting ill as well, right? They were unhealthy. And so we had to spend a lot of our time, money, resources on pouring back into those businesses. And so it got really busy for us. Now, at that time, it was a lot of the coaching was just being done by me and a few others. We've scaled to like over 10 coaches now, 10 or 13. I think we're at like 13 or 14 coaches to be honest. And I think it's really, right now it's about, hitting our purpose. Our purpose is to do a good work that gives back to God's work, right? So that's our purpose. And so we want to be able to give $2.6 million to God's work by 2026. And in order to do that, we've got to open up our funnel in order to get more in, to help more, to impact more. Because if we don't impact, then we're not doing a good work. And the way I'm set up is my products are set up that I don't charge in full until the end of my coaching, like at the end of our first 90 days, because I want to be able to measure that we did a good work. Everything, all decisions I make are measured around that purpose. Does it support the purpose? The business I start, does it help get me closer to my purpose? The podcast, does it help get me closer to my purpose? And in order to hit the 2.6 million, then I have to influence a lot of people. In order to influence a lot of people, I need to inspire even more, right? And hopefully that funnels people down into a product that then we can impact them with. And if we do a good work with the right way in impacting them, right? Not a great work, a good work, then we can then in return be paid. And then in return for that, give back to God's work. But I don't want to be known as a guru, right? I don't want to be known as someone who's out there pushing a message, false hope, things like that, and then getting paid for it and then running off with it. I want to be able to measure that we did a good work by receiving payment at the end of the service. Now, we do ask for a deposit and we ask for things to get some level of commitment from people, but we don't actually charge in full on our power days till the end of the 90-day implementation that we're doing with our business operating system. And then everything after that's a monthly cost that allows people to drop out if they're not getting value. So like, there's nothing that ever locks people into our program, so we can keep them in the area of doing good work. So the podcast, right? Why a podcast? Well, because if we're going to impact the number of people we need to, in order to do a good work at that level, in order to get enough to give back to God's work, then we have to have a bigger reach, right? And we have to have a reach that's not just real estate. Same reason for the books that I'm writing right now, right? Both of the books I'm writing right now are around the business operating framework of RISE, resources, inspiration, systems, and engagement. One's a fable, one's a tactical book. And so the goal with that tactical book is to get it in enough people's hands. Here's the thing. It's something I struggled with the other day. 2 publishers have offered me to publish our book. One, I probably will go with, has come at me with the idea of why do I want to publish a book, right? And again, everything goes back to my purpose. And their response to me was, there's 2 ways to go about publishing your book. One is we could publish it, put it on our bookshelf, see what happens with it, see where it goes. 2, we could keep the price really low on the book and push it to thousands of people. Now, would it make it a bestseller? Possibly. I'm not looking at that for that reason. I'm looking at that because it gives me opportunity to put this qualified, quality, good work into a book form that gets it to thousands and thousands and maybe hundreds of thousands of people, right? And make it acceptable. And I thought about that. Like, does it cheapen the value of it? What does it do for it? And at the end of the day, the goal, the purpose is to get this good work in as many people's hands as possible. What does a podcast do? A podcast takes content, Audible book content, and puts it in people's hands at the cheapest cost possible, right? So what better way to reach an audience, to influence, inspire, and impact others and the millions of people avenue than a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Better way to push back to and give back to people that are struggling. And that's what I call good work.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And so I'm glad to hear that the podcast is part of your business strategy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking through, like, you going back to the podcast. I'm thinking through, like, all of the stuff that you probably have going on. I mean, with family, with a bunch of different businesses. Is it challenging to go back to the podcast? Are you crazy busy, or how do you find the time with everything else that you got going on?
So the business podcast is designed to help other business entrepreneurs rise, right, to their 100%. And one of the ways we can do that really easy is through example, right? Example of other people's stories. The nice thing about the podcast for me is, one, it's not about me, right? Like, it's not about me. And I feel like a lot of our businesses, when I speak on stage, even be on this podcast, it's always like, Gary, tell us about your story. And honestly, I don't want it about me, right? Like, it's not about me. It's about the purpose, about why I'm doing it, is why, what I want it about. And so the podcast makes it about you. It makes it about the entrepreneur that's trying to grow a business. And so it allows them to tell their story. It gives them a platform, right? And so that's, for me, more of the reason for the push. So, like, at the end of the day, it's like, how busy are you? How do you make time for this? Well, we make time for things we value.